Imagine, for a second, saving like 30% of your entire product budget.
Oh, which is a dream for anyone listening.
Right. You launch your app months ahead of schedule, you're feeling like an absolute genius, and then bam,
Disaster strikes.
literally,
Yeah.
you watch your entire company just grind to a halt because a third-party Bluetooth plugin you downloaded for free suddenly stopped working after a standard iOS update.
Yeah, the classic nightmare scenario.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what today's deep dive is about. We were looking at the most consequential yet entirely invisible choice in software development.
It really is the architectural foundation of the entire mobile world. And the funny paradox of good design is that if you actually make the right choice here, the user will never even know you made it.
Yeah, they just use the app.
Exactly. The technology just gets out of their way completely.
But getting to that frictionless experience, I mean, it requires navigating this very visible, very intense war behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you're, say, mapping out a new digital product right now, you might assume you just need to hire, quote-unquote, a developer and, get to work.
Which is a very common misconception.
Right. But the choice between native and cross-platform development, it directly dictates your project's cost, your timeline, and ultimately whether your app feels like a joy to use or just a clunky, frustrating mess.
And to really navigate this properly, we are grounding our discussion today in a really fantastic breakdown from December 2025.
Yeah, the article by Johan Frege.
That's the one. He's the CTO of Intunio, which is this really prominent app agency based over in Gothenburg.
Right.
And what makes his perspective so incredibly valuable for us is that, well, he isn't just speaking from theory. He is looking at years of hard, real-world data from actual client projects.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Frege lays out the landscape incredibly clearly. But before we get into the heavy debate, we really need to draw the battle lines.
Yeah, define the terms.
Exactly. What are the actual mechanics of what we're talking about when we say native versus cross-platform?
So at its core, it is really about how your code physically communicates with the device in your hand.
Okay.
When we talk about native app development, we mean building a completely separate, dedicated application for an iPhone and a completely separate application for an Android phone.
So you're building everything twice.
Basically, yeah. You're using the proprietary languages and the specific toolkits that were created by Apple and Google themselves.
Right. So for Apple, you're building with Swift and using SwiftUI, right?
Exactly.
Which is essentially Apple's bespoke toolkit for assembling the interfaces. And then for Android, you're writing in Kotlin and using Jetpack Compose, which is Google's equivalent toolkit.
Which means you are dealing with entirely separate ecosystems. I mean, two code bases, two different skill sets, two parallel tracks of work.
Wow.
Now, on the other side of the ring, we have cross-platform development, and this relies on a shared code base.
Meaning you write it once.
Yes. You write the core logic of the app once, and a framework essentially translates that single set of instructions so it can run on both iOS and Android simultaneously.
And the heavy hitters in that space are Flutter, which is backed by Google and uses a language called Dart, right?
Correct.
And then there's React Native, which comes from Meta and relies on JavaScript or TypeScript.
Yeah, languages that are incredibly common on the web, which is a huge factor. The fundamental promise of cross-platform is, of course, extreme efficiency.
Because you maintain one code base, but unlock the two largest mobile platforms on Earth at the same time.
Exactly.
I was trying to visualize the difference in how these two approaches actually operate under the hood. And, to me, building natively is like having a direct biological nervous system connection to the phone.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Like the app feels every swipe, every gesture, and every hardware sensor instantly because it's literally speaking the device's native tongue.
That is a very visceral way to look at it, and honestly, technically quite accurate.
But then cross-platform is like having a highly skilled translator in an earpiece.
Yeah.
Like the message definitely gets through, and you can communicate with anyone in the world, but there's always that tiny fraction of a millisecond of lag.
Right, because the translator has to process it.
Exactly. The translator has to hear the instruction, convert it, and then deliver it. And sometimes, the subtle local cultural gestures just get totally lost in translation.
What's fascinating here is how incredibly sophisticated that translator has actually become.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if we look at the historical context, cross-platform used to be kind of a dirty word in high-end development. It was known for being slow and clunky.
I remember those early apps. They were terrible.
They really were. But as the sheer processing power of smartphones just exploded, these frameworks matured. The source actually notes a critical tipping point right around 2018 to 2020.
Okay, so a few years back.
Right. Flutter and React Native evolved from, experimental shortcuts into true enterprise-grade tools. They became capable of delivering experiences that, for the vast majority of standard apps, are virtually indistinguishable from native.
And that tipping point must have completely anchored the economics of building a tech startup.
Oh, fundamentally.
I mean, if you can reach 100% of the mobile market by doing only like 60% of the work, that is a massive competitive advantage.
And the data from Intunio really puts a hard number on that advantage. Frege highlights their internal agency data from projects spanning 2021 to 2024.
Okay, so very recent data.
Yes. And in projects where the requirements were actually a good fit for cross-platform, they observed time savings of 20 to 30%.
Wow, 30% is massive for a startup's runway.
It's huge.
And it would literally be the difference between surviving long enough to raise your next round of funding or running out of cash and shutting down.
Exactly.
But, there has to be a catch. 30% less time implies we are skipping something pretty major.
Yeah, and that's the crucial nuance that often gets misunderstood by management teams. That 20 to 30% savings applies specifically and only to the pure implementation phase.
Meaning the actual coding.
Right. The physical typing of the code.
So it is not a magic wand that shrinks the entire life cycle of the product.
Not at all. I mean, a cross-platform framework does not speed up your design phase.
Yeah.
It doesn't help you map out your user flows.
Right.
It doesn't write your backend server logic or structure your APIs, the pathways your app uses to pull data from the cloud.
So all that infrastructure still has to be built.
Exactly. It doesn't speed up quality assurance testing across hundreds of different screen sizes, and it certainly doesn't make complex business decisions for you. All of that incredibly expensive human work takes the exact same amount of time, regardless of your tech stack.
That makes perfect sense. The translator in the earpiece only translates the speech. It doesn't write the script for you.
That's a great way to put it.
So, based on Intunio's real-world data, where is cross-platform the absolute smartest bet?
Well, it shines exceptionally bright for applications that are primarily designed to display structured data.
Like what, for example?
Think about newsreaders, flight booking systems, internal company directories, or e-commerce storefronts, applications where the phone is essentially acting as a glass window into a database.
You're just pulling lists of information from a server and presenting them.
Exactly. For those use cases, writing the interface once and deploying it to both Apple and Android is incredibly efficient.
I have to stop you there, though.
Sure.
Because I am looking at this entirely from a business perspective right now. If Intunio's data shows a 30% time savings on coding, and, time is literally money, why are we even having a debate?
Fair question.
Why would any rational business leader willingly choose to pay two different developers to do duplicate work and build natively, just for a slightly more direct nervous system connection? Everyday users don't care about the underlying code.
They really don't.
Like, when I order a pizza on my phone, I don't care if the app was compiled in Swift or Dart.
Right.
I just want my pizza.
You are hitting on the exact friction point that every product manager faces. You are right. The user couldn't care less about the code, but they care deeply on a subconscious level about how the app feels.
The feel.
Yes. And that feel is where native development remains the undisputed gold standard.
That invisible magic we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So what are we actually noticing when an app feels off?
We are noticing the subtle violations of the operating system's natural physics.
Oh, interesting.
iOS and Android are not just differently colored boxes. They have deeply ingrained, completely different philosophies regarding navigation, animations, and momentum.
So they literally move differently.
Exactly. The way a screen bounces when you scroll past the bottom of a list is fundamentally different on an iPhone than on a Google Pixel. The way a menu slides in from the edge of the screen operates on a totally different mathematical curve.
So when you use a cross-platform framework, you're essentially trying to force a generic set of behaviors onto two very opinionated, highly specific operating systems.
Yes, and that is where the translator analogy really holds up. The framework is trying its best to mimic the native feel, but it is often an approximation.
It's like an uncanny valley for software.
Precisely. But when you build natively, you aren't mimicking anything. You are using the exact same tools that Apple and Google use to build their own operating systems.
So it just works.
Right. The app automatically inherits all of the native physics, the precise accessibility features, and the exact design guidelines. It feels just right to the user without you having to fake it.
Which matters, because users rarely care if your app looks identical to the version running on their friend's totally different phone. They just want the app to feel entirely native to the device they paid $1,000 for.
Yeah, it's about respecting the platform. But it goes much deeper than just the visual polish, though.
Oh.
Yeah, the Intunio article brings up a highly technical and frankly terrifying scenario that we can call the hardware trap. And this is the primary reason large companies often run back to native development.
I saw that in the source. How does the hardware trap actually work? Why does cross-platform suddenly become a liability?
Well, it comes down to architecture. Cross-platform code lives inside its own little container on the phone.
Okay.
It cannot talk directly to the phone's physical hardware, like the camera, the accelerometer, or, say, the Bluetooth antenna.
Well, how does it do anything?
To communicate with the hardware, the cross-platform code has to send a message across a software bridge to the native side of the phone.
So the framework relies on these bridges to actually do anything physical.
Exactly. And here is the trap. Those bridges are rarely built by Apple or Google. They're usually built by third-party developers in the open source community.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. So when Apple releases a massive new iOS update with entirely new Bluetooth protocols, native developers have immediate day-one access to those new tools.
But the cross-platform developers are stuck waiting.
Yes.
They have to wait for whoever maintains that third-party Bluetooth bridge to rewrite their code to support the new Apple update.
And Intunio shared a specific real-world example of exactly this nightmare. They were relying on advanced Bluetooth communication for a project, but the specific Bluetooth modules they were using in the cross-platform framework were suddenly abandoned by the community.
Wow.
Yeah, the original developers just stopped updating them.
That is the scenario from my introduction. You have a functioning product, an OS update rolls out, the bridge collapses, and the person who built the bridge is nowhere to be found.
It's terrifying.
Right.
The Intunio team was backed into a corner. They were forced to painstakingly rebuild massive chunks of that complex Bluetooth functionality entirely from scratch.
Ouch.
Yeah, they had to go under the hood and write custom native code just to bridge the gap, entirely negating the time they originally saved by choosing cross-platform in the first place.
That is a phenomenal example of why duplicate work is sometimes the cheapest option in the long run.
It really is.
Building natively isn't just about smooth animations. It is an insurance policy against third-party abandonment. You are ensuring direct, unfiltered access to the device's hardware.
And that direct access is non-negotiable if your app relies on real-time sensor data, complex background processing, advanced camera features, or augmented reality.
Like a fitness tracker.
Exactly. If you are building a fitness app that needs to constantly track heart rate and GPS in the background without draining the battery, you need the native nervous system.
Okay, so we have a clear technical understanding now. On one side, we have the immense efficiency of the cross-platform translator for data-heavy apps. On the other side, we have the uncompromised, future-proof stability of the native nervous system.
Right.
But, transitioning to the business side of things, you cannot make this tech choice in a vacuum. I mean, it feels like buying a high-performance sports car, but realizing too late that your in-house mechanic only knows how to fix tractors.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the human element is usually the deciding factor. Technology doesn't write itself.
And Johan Frege outlines how Intunio tackles this practically. They don't just hand a client a generic recommendation.
No, they don't.
They hold a specific workshop strategy at their offices in central Gothenburg. They physically map out the client's actual organizational capabilities.
It is a critical step because once an agency finishes the initial build and hands the product back to the client, well, the client's internal team has to be capable of maintaining it, updating it, and squashing bugs.
Right.
If you saddle a team with the technology they don't understand, the product will slowly decay. To prevent this, Intunio uses a targeted decision matrix, a series of fundamental questions about the team and their goals.
Let's explore how that matrix actually dictates the outcome. Because this isn't just a checklist, it's a series of cascading trade-offs.
Okay.
For example, if a client sits down in that Gothenburg office and says, hey, we already have a massive team of in-house web developers managing our website, how does that skew the decision?
It heavily skews the recommendation toward React Native.
Really?
Because React Native relies on JavaScript and TypeScript, the foundational languages of the internet, a traditional web developer can adapt to it surprisingly quickly. The underlying paradigms are very similar.
So it's about resource management.
Exactly. You are essentially leveraging the talent you already have on payroll rather than trying to hire incredibly expensive, dedicated iOS and Android specialists in a very competitive market.
That makes a lot of business sense. But what if that same client adds a caveat? What if their marketing department demands that the app must look pixel for pixel identical on a $1,000 iPhone and a $200 budget Android device?
Okay.
They want absolute brand uniformity everywhere. Does React Native still win?
Actually, that specific requirement changes the math entirely, and it pushes the needle toward Flutter.
Oh, why is that?
The way Flutter works is fundamentally different. Instead of relying on the phone's native interface components to draw buttons and menus, Flutter actually includes its own graphics rendering engine.
Like a video game.
Much like a video game engine draws a game world, yes. It draws every single pixel itself.
Oh, that is a brilliant distinction. So it completely bypasses the phone's operating system when it comes to visual design.
Precisely. Because it draws its own interface, a Flutter app looks mathematically identical regardless of the hardware it is running on.
Wow.
But you trade away that native feel we discussed earlier because you are overriding the device's natural physics.
It is all about what you are willing to sacrifice.
Always.
Now, what if the client's primary concern isn't about today, but about a decade from now? They want absolute, rock-solid predictability for the next 10 years.
Then native is really the only safe harbor.
Really? No cross-platform at all?
No, because the tech industry is notoriously fickle. The popularity of cross-platform frameworks is cyclical. A framework that is beloved today might be completely obsolete in 5 years as developers migrate to the next shiny tool. But Swift and Kotlin are tied directly to the survival of Apple and Google. As long as iPhones and Androids exist, those native languages will be supported and updated. Native development insulates your core business from the shifting trends of the open source community.
And the final piece of the matrix involves extending beyond mobile entirely. If a company knows they eventually want to use this exact same code to build a desktop application or a web app, cross-platform clearly has the edge, right?
It offers a significant head start, yes. Both Flutter and React Native allow you to deploy your codebase to the web and to desktop environments. You can reuse a massive amount of your business logic.
Which saves time.
It does, but Intunio provides a very necessary warning here. A cross-platform mobile framework deployed to the web is still a compromise.
In what way?
It is often heavier and less optimized than a dedicated web framework like React or Vue. So if the web experience is actually your primary revenue driver, you shouldn't force a mobile tool to do a web tool's job just to save a few hours of coding.
You really have to be rigorously honest about what your core product actually is.
Absolutely.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh.
Because everything we have discussed so far, this entire matrix of trade-offs, is built on the traditional rules of software engineering. The fundamental premise has always been that native development requires expensive, manual, duplicate labor.
Yes, that has been the anchor holding native development back for a decade.
But the final section of Frige's analysis introduces a landscape-altering wildcard: artificial intelligence.
Ah, yes.
I want to throw a conceptual wrench into this whole debate. If the primary argument against native was the sheer cost of paying 2 humans to write the same logic in 2 different languages, what happens to this debate when an AI agent can just do that duplicate work for us instantly?
You are identifying the exact tectonic shift occurring in the industry right now. Leading up to this December 2025 article, AI hasn't just improved, it has fundamentally rewritten the calculus of how we build software.
It's attacking the exact friction point that made cross-platform so appealing in the first place.
Yeah.
How is it actually doing this in practice? Is it just writing the code from scratch?
It goes far beyond just generating code snippets. Imagine a developer spends 3 days writing a highly complex algorithm in Swift for the iPhone app.
Okay.
Traditionally, an Android developer would then have to spend another 3 days manually translating that logic into Kotlin. Today, an experienced developer can feed that Swift architecture into an advanced AI model, and the AI will accurately translate the logic into idiomatic Kotlin in seconds.
So the translation bottleneck simply vanishes.
It shrinks dramatically. And the AI doesn't stop at translation. It can automatically generate the repetitive boilerplate code that connects the interface to the database.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
It can instantly write comprehensive unit tests for both platforms simultaneously. It acts as an insanely fast, hyper-competent assistant that completely devours the manual duplicate labor that used to make native development so cost-prohibitive.
Which means that 30% time savings advantage we talked about with cross-platform, that massive lead is actively being eroded.
The gap is becoming surprisingly narrow. Now, the source makes sure to clarify that cross-platform frameworks aren't disappearing. There's still an incredibly powerful, efficient way to build data-driven applications.
Right.
But the decision is no longer a simple binary choice driven by the feel of doing duplicate work.
Because if AI can do the duplicate work in the background, you might as well choose the native route and get all the benefits of that direct hardware connection.
The modern calculation is much more about establishing the correct underlying architecture and utilizing a highly automated toolchain. If a team has seamlessly integrated AI into their workflow, the penalty for building natively is a fraction of what it was just 2 years ago.
So what does this all mean? For the listener, I mean. If you are sketching out a product roadmap, trying to navigate this massive invisible decision, the takeaway isn't that native is universally right or cross-platform is wrong.
No, not at all.
It boils down to three core pillars: the technical complexity of your app, the actual expertise of your current team, and your appetite for long-term maintenance.
This raises an important question for any leader. As the technological ground shifts beneath our feet, especially with AI redefining how fast we can work, you must remain incredibly disciplined.
Right.
You cannot choose a technology just because it is trending. You must align your tech stack with your organization's grounded, realistic capabilities today, while keeping one eye intensely focused on how you will maintain that architecture 5 years from now.
It is a delicate, constantly evolving balancing act. And as AI gets more sophisticated at translating code, understanding deep architectural nuance, and automatically bridging the gaps between different operating systems, it leaves us with a fascinating prospect.
What's that?
Will we eventually reach a point where the entire debate between native and cross-platform becomes a historical footnote? Will the developers of the future simply write pure, abstract, human logic and let an AI instantaneously weave it into the perfect, uncompromised native fabric of any device on Earth?
The trajectory we are on suggests that horizon is approaching much faster than anyone anticipated.
And when we finally cross that threshold, tapping an app icon really will be pure, invisible magic. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the tools you use, look under the hood of the technology shaping your life, and as always, stay curious.